Ever since I started going on late season goat hunts, I've been on the quest to find the perfect 4-season shelter for that style of hunt. Now, there's a couple significant problems with that. One, there's no free lunch. So if you want something durable and warm that's going to hold up to the elements, it tends to get very heavy. Also, you kind of need space in a winter shelter because you tend to get stuck in it a lot. There's not a lot of daylight, so you end up spending a lot of time in your shelter. Now, the bigger you make something, the heavier it gets. And to top it all off, there's not a lot of forgiveness in testing late season shelters. If you're heading out for a week at minus 20 degrees Celsius with 20 to 30 centimeters of snow forecast every day, and you're going to be 7 or 8 miles from the truck, crossing multiple rivers, going up 4,000 or 5,000 feet vertical elevation, it's not really the time you want to take untested gear. However, I've kept looking. I started out with the Hilleberg Solo, then I moved over to the Stone Glacier Solus, and this year, the MSR Access 1. Now, I went on 2 late season goat hunts this year and was able to take this tent on both those trips. So before we waste any more time in the studio, I did a kind of infield review, took my notes, shared a bunch of footage. Let's jump over and watch that. Then we'll come back in the studio and I'll fill in the gaps.
All right, I'm out on a late season goat hunt in northern British Columbia, and I'm testing out a bunch of gear while I'm here. And so one of the new pieces this year is this MSR Access 1. So it's an ultralight 4-season shelter. I'll go over all the specs, but it's about 3.7 pounds. It's one of the lightest weight 4-season rated tents I've come across. It's not cheap. Been running it for a few days already, and I'm pretty impressed overall with the performance. So I'm going to give you a look at the outside, and then as always, I'll give you a look at the inside, because that's one of the biggest issues with 4-season shelters is how much room is actually inside. So let's go get you a bit of a look. So pretty standard design. See if I can get a look from the end. Also, I would highly recommend bringing an ultralight tarp on late season hunts. You need somewhere where you can sit and chill, especially when really bad weather comes in. So there you can, it's a very narrow tent, right? One piece pole mechanism that all goes together. I'll try and do another setup teardown video of this, but I wanted to get some in the field footage for everybody. So I use a large rectangular pad. I'm 6'1", 240 pounds, and tiny pads don't do it for me. Ignore that. That is actually a failure of an X-Ped down mat. I'm going to do a review on this when I get home. This one's a couple years old, but essentially I think the glue that holds the baffling together when I inflated it let go. And so there was a big lump in the middle. Wasn't really that bad to sleep on, but anyways, that's a side note. So you can see I have maybe, 3, let's call it 4 inches in front of my pad up there, and it is right against the bottom down there. And I run a 25 by 78 large rectangular. There's essentially no room on that side, and I have maybe 5 inches here that tapers down to nothing, and then tapers down to nothing here. Now let me hop in and show you the headroom, because this is really the highlight for me. I have not had a 4-season shelter that I could sit in and have this much headroom and shoulder room without getting soaking wet on all the walls. I've run both the Hilleberg Solo and the Stone Glacier Solus. Great tents, but they are way tighter for headroom than this one is. Both of those tents are also significantly heavier. I would argue slightly beefier, but from what I can tell so far, this is a very sturdy 4-season tent. See if I can, you see there, I got like at least 4 or 5 inches all the way to the top, tons of shoulder room. decent sized vestibule for sure. Definitely feels bigger than the Hilleberg Solo. And there's 0 vestibule space in the Solus. There's those 2 side vestibules, but if you watch my review on that tent, I feel that they're kind of useless. Basically, there's like minimal stash side on the other side. There's no point, like you wouldn't stick anything in there, but you do have both sides of this vestibule. This closes all the way. That's a ton of room. I also really love this zipper placement here. It's super easy to do up while you're inside. I find with a lot of the shelters, it's difficult to actually reach the zipper. And it's just a pain in the ass to get in and out. Because this one cuts diagonally, super handy. And also with so much room on the inside, on these late season tents, you are in your tent a lot. It got dark at 4:30 and it's like 9:30 a.m. now, and the sun is just coming up. So what I could do was sit up inside, sit on my sleeping pad, have this mat right here in my vestibule, and then close the door, the vestibule. It would keep it nice and warm inside. I could sit there, I could drink my coffee, I could listen to a podcast, write notes on my phone, do whatever. And that was super comfortable. So yeah, there's a quick overview of the MSR Access 1.
So a bit more context. That was my first hunt of the year. Ended up getting 60 mils of freezing rain the following day. Had to pull out on day 3. Came home for a few weeks, regrouped, went back out for round number 2. So here's a little bit of footage from round 2.
All right, that's the end of day 2. I think we did, what do you think, like 3,000 feet? Maybe 8 kilometers total by now?
Yeah, about that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So not impressive by normal standards for 2 days work, but given how steep the terrain is and the fact that we're on snowshoes, I'm super impressed. 2 fantastic days back to back. Weather's been great, hiking's been great, spirits are high. We got camp set up, so we pounded out a huge pad. Rick's got the Acto going. I've got an MSR Access 1, just about to boil some water. That's the only drawback, obviously, being this high, this cold. We got to melt snow for all of our food, so we ended up bringing a metric shit ton of fuel with it.
All right, so that second hunt was basically the polar opposite, pardon the pun, of the first hunt. We did 5 nights, minus 27 degrees Celsius, hiked all the way up to 5,600 feet on top of the Cambrian ice field. It was legitimately one of the most amazing hunts of my life, but provided a significantly different testing opportunity and significantly different challenges than the first hunt did. So now I'm going to break down all the technical details of the tent, and then I'll get into how it performed over both those hunts. All right, before we get into that, quick note about Mindful Hunter outfitting. I still have 1 week open for 2 hunters. So if you want to come hunting in British Columbia and chase giant coastal black bears with me this spring, jay@mindfulhunter.com. Also, I've got 4 spots open for archery mule deer this October in Alberta. Big giant bucks, lots of opportunity. Again, you want to chase archery mule deer in Alberta, jay@mindfulhunter.com. So this tent retails for $680 USD. However, I did notice this morning, and I'm recording this video on March 25th, I think. If you go to backcountry.com, they've actually got it for 45% off, and it's currently listed at $380. But it is not a cheap tent. MSRP $680 USD. Also comes in 2 and 3 person variations. But I think for those of you who are looking for the ultimate solo shelter, just go with the 1P. It's definitely got enough room, and it's worth the weight savings over the 2P. All in, the tent weighs 3.5 pounds. Now I add 4 MSR Blizzard snow stakes to it, and that brings it up to 3.7 pounds. But that's the entire package right here. Case, wraps, poles, pegs, the whole 9 yards. Okay, let's dive into the materials. The poles are made by Easton and they're called their Cyclone poles. When you pick them up and use them, you assume they're carbon fiber. They actually say they're composite in the marketing collateral. I don't know exactly what goes into that composite material, but they're not listed as carbon fiber. And they say they have been specifically engineered for the harsh climate of winter conditions because carbon fiber poles do have a tendency to snap. So your ass does pucker a little bit when you are like reefing on those things and it's minus 25 degrees Celsius and you're like, are these things gonna break in half and I'm gonna be screwed? But the poles held up fine. The one note I will make about the poles is that the elastic kind of lost its stretch on the second hunt. I went to go set up my tent and there was literally no stretch in the poles whatsoever. And I kind of had to hold the poles together until I got them in all of the little inserts that go in at the corner, and then the pressure would keep the poles together. Now, when I got back and dried everything out and brought everything back up to like a regular temperature, most of the elasticity came back into the stretch cord that's inside the poles, and the poles seemed to work normal again. I don't know if there was still a little bit of moisture in the poles from the first hunt, even though I dried everything out incredibly well. Could have been the elevation, could have been the extreme cold, but it's definitely a point to note. I didn't really see anybody else commenting on it on any of the forums or any of the online research that I did, but it was also a very severe hunt, that second one. So I want to share that the elastic cord did not really hold up to like sub 20 degrees Celsius temperatures when I went out and used them. The stakes it comes with are 8 MSR groundhog stakes. The canopy is 20D ripstop nylon paired with a 10D polyester mesh. And I'm gonna break this open and show you some of the fabrics that are inside the tent in a moment here, because that polyester mesh, I think, is one of the things that sets this tent apart from its competitors. It's significantly thinner, which actually aids in the breathability of the tent and decreases the weight of the tent by quite a bit. The Rainfly is 20D ripstop nylon with a 1200 mm waterproof rating with polyurethane and silicone. And the floor is a 30D ripstop nylon with a 3000 millimeter water resistance rating, and it has an extended bathtub. And so that extra durable floor material comes up a good 8 to 10 inches off the floor onto the bottoms of all the walls, which I appreciated quite a bit. It offers significant protection and just an added sense of durability to the tent overall. Setup was super simple. There's basically one pole system that all goes together. It's got 2 Ys at the end and then a kind of cross member that goes across the middle, but it's completely symmetrical, so you can set it up either way, so you literally cannot screw it up. I bet you I can set up this tent in under 2 minutes. Packability, this tent is fantastic. I tend to take this and strap it to the bottom of my bag. Something really unique about this tent is that it comes in a burrito style bag, which I haven't had before. So I'm gonna crack this open so you guys can have a look and see what I mean. So if we pop open the little snaps, you'll notice right away, it's not a typical like tube bag. So basically you undo this draw cord and then it opens like this, and there's a flap tied into the one side that comes out. And then you just lay everything inside. And when you go to pack it up, you just stuff everything in. You lay this in and then just tighten it up. So it saves so much time, and you can really get everything just as tight. Now we're in here, I want to show you some of those fabrics that I was talking about earlier. So this is the floor material. It's really thick, no stretch to it, highly waterproof. And then if we open this up a little bit, so here's the materials on the inside of the tent. This is the 10D polyester mesh used in the window. And then earlier, the ultralight material I was referring to is this 20D ripstop nylon, which feels significantly lighter than other 20D ripstop nylon that I have had in tents, but overall, a really great material. It's got a very nice hand feel to it as well. So now let's have a discussion about the structural stability and the overall weather performance. So the tent is very stable. It is built very well, designed to, face adverse conditions extraordinarily well. Now, what did I personally put it through? So the big deal on the first hunt, in one 24-hour period, I got close to 60 mils of freezing rain, and then it got down below freezing next day, and I got a considerable dump of snow, maybe 8 to 10 inches. Zero issues with the tent. Completely waterproof. None of the freezing rain did anything to the tent. The tent didn't sag. Tent didn't experience any adverse effects whatsoever. And then on the second hunt, zero snow, never snowed once. But like I said, we did 5 nights at minus 27. Extremely cold. Again, no adverse effects on the tent whatsoever. Nothing broke, nothing ripped. None of the zippers got stuck. Didn't have any issues with any of the straps on any of the corners. It held up extraordinarily well. Now, what I can't personally comment on it is really heavy snow load. Although the walls are so steep, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Or really high winds. But again, it has a very narrow design. So as long as you set this facing into the predominant wind direction, I don't see it being a problem. Now, the poles are definitely smaller than some of its counterparts. I think the Solo has 10 millimeter DAC poles. I think the Solus might also have, it's either 9 mil or 10 mil. I can't remember off the top of my head. But these Cyclone are significantly smaller. So I think those bigger poles give you a greater sense of confidence. But once you run these Cyclone poles, and based on the research I've done, they seem to be just as sturdy. And I do notice even the 9 and 10 mil DAC poles do bend after a while, and they kind of take the shape of the tent, and I wonder about their long-term durability in that regard. But based on the experiences I've had in the tent, highly durable, great structural stability, and seems to hold up to weather incredibly well. Quick interruption so I can share another update. Would you like to win a Swarovski ATX 85mm spotting scope? If you answered yes, listen to the next 30 seconds. So I just released the 2025 Forged in the Backcountry apparel drop. Now, the kind of flagship piece of these are the Forged base boxers. That's what I built the whole launch around. I completely redesigned a pair of boxers for backcountry hunters. In addition to that, I launched a waterproof hat. In addition to that, I launched 5 new t-shirt designs. All of this stuff kind of came out mid-February. So from now until April 30th, every $5 that you spend at forgedinthebackcountry.com will get you 1 entry to win a Swarovski ATX 85. So if you buy $50 worth of gear, you get 10 entries to win that spotter. All you got to do is go to forgedinthebackcountry.com, add some apparel to your cart, check out, you're done. Full contest rules are available on my website. So the thing everyone always wants to know, breathability and condensation. And let me break something down to you here. You cannot beat the laws of physics. When you are trying to build a warm shelter for backcountry camping in late season, deep winter, whatever you want to call it, the warmer you make it, the less it's going to breathe. Because the way it stays warm is by keeping the air warmed up by your breath and your body inside the shelter. The moment you let all that air out, you have to reheat the new air coming in. So by nature, winter shelters tend to have a higher degree of condensation and a lower degree of breathability. So that being said, how does this stack up? I would say it is marginally better than the Hilleberg and the Stone Glacier, the Solo and the Solus. I think that internal canopy fabric being slightly thinner, the little mesh window at the top certainly helps. If it's not crazy cold, you can crack the door, and that helps a lot, but I figure that's not really an apples to apples comparison. But I would say maybe 5 to 10% less condensation in this tent than those tents. Still a significant amount of condensation. And I'll tell you here right now, the trick is every day after you get out of your tent, typically I do this when I get back to camp at night, I scrape out all the frost from inside my tent. So when you get up in the morning, all the condensation will be liquid and you'll have little beads on the inside of your tent. One thing I do is I take a blue kitchen sponge and I will wipe some of that off and just squeeze the sponge and dump it outside. However, what I like to do even more is I leave for the day, allow all that condensation to freeze. When I get back at night, I shake the hell out of the tent, beat the walls a little bit, pull my sleeping pad out. All that condensation is frozen into frost. It drops onto the floor. I kind of scoop it up with my gloves and throw it outside. Condensation only sucks when it starts dripping on your face and on your sleeping bag and everything else. And just one night in the tent, I don't find it produces enough condensation to really do that. However, if you're sleeping in this thing every night for a week and you don't get rid of the frost on a daily basis, what happens is the inside of that tent is covered in frost. You get back in, within 10 to 15 minutes, the frost melts and you start getting the little drips everywhere inside of your tent. So I think if you do that, you will find most winter tents are very manageable when it comes to condensation. Now, the last factor I wanted to get into was livability. One of the things that I mentioned before about winter camping and winter hunting is that you spend a lot of time inside your tent. So a tent can check a whole bunch of boxes as far as weight, structural stability, water resistance, and all that kind of stuff. If you are cramped or you don't fit inside that tent, or it's not enjoyable to sit down and have a cup of coffee and relax in your tent, in my opinion, that tent is a bad match for you. So let's start off with the dimensions of this tent. So it is advertised as being 84 inches long and 33 inches wide and 40 inches tall. I would say they've underestimated the height by about an inch. Based on me in other tents, me knowing how tall my torso is, I think it's closer to 41 and a half inches of vertical clearance in the middle of the tent. And then the length they've stated at 84, I think it's closer to 81, 80 to 81 at best. And obviously, the width of 33 is only in the center of the tent. You'll remember from that video, at the foot and the head, there was almost no gaps between my sleeping pad and the wall. My sleeping pad is 25 inches wide. It's not 33 inches wide. And I really only had that 6 or 7 inches in the middle. So I think the width is true. Just recognize it's not a rectangle. It's like, what would that be? It's more of a hexagon. Anyways, livability. Here's the big thing for me. I'm 6'1", 240 pounds. I can lay down in this tent and my face is not touching the internal fabric. Like if you try and live in an acto as a 6'1" dude, you're done. I personally don't think anybody over 5'8" can reasonably live in an acto for an extended period of time because the walls have such a steep angle on them and that internal fabric has such a droop in Hilleberg tents that it just lays right on your face. So I can lay down perfectly flat. My head doesn't touch. My feet don't touch. I'm comfortable that way. So big win. I can sit up and I can have a cup of coffee. And that's a big deal. I like to wake up in the morning or before I go to bed at night and I have a cup of hot chocolate. I want to be able to sit in my tent, maybe mess with some gear, do with some things, check some stuff on my phone, look at maps for the next day. Even if the door is open, sitting inside the tent is much warmer because you kind of build up that shell of warm air around you. So the last thing that would factor into livability is vestibule space. Having at least some vestibule space greatly impacts the livability of the tent because you've got a place to put stuff and keep it dry. This is one of the major drawbacks of the Stone Glacier Solus is that there's no vestibule, no practical vestibule whatsoever. It has the two side vestibules, but there's nothing that you can access while sitting at the front door. If you enjoyed this review, if you like the fact that I do non-sponsored, unbiased gear reviews, I'm not financially incentivized by any brands whatsoever, and the only people's opinion I care about are you, the end user, and my duty to provide you the best, most accurate information possible. If you find that useful and you appreciate it and you want to see more of it, I would appreciate your support. To do that, you go to mindful-reviews.com and become a member of the online community that I built from the ground up. Now, to sweeten the deal, between now and April 30th, 2025, anyone who enters will be automatically entered to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. So again, you can join for as little as $5 a month. If you like these reviews and you want to see more of them, I could really appreciate the support. So again, mindful-reviews.com. Head on over there, grab a membership, and you will be automatically entered to win the Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. All right, final thoughts. Of all the winter tents I have tested, this one is my favorite, and not by a small margin. The elastic cord thing kind of bugs me, I'm going to be honest, but I can live with that. And again, that only happened on the one hunt. I would like another season with it to see if I can replicate that, or if it doesn't happen again. And then I'll have a better understanding of that, like the core nature of that particular issue. But the fact that it's the lightest of all three, the fact that it has the most internal room of all three, the best vestibule of all three, like really across all domains, I think this tent, and price-wise, it's not that, they're all kind of somewhat similarly priced. So for me, if you are looking for a solo 4-season shelter for late season hunting, where you are going to be in sub-zero temperatures, right now, this is my best recommendation to you. Obviously, I will keep testing shelters. If you found something that you think is better than this, or you just found something that you think is another interesting option to look at, please drop a note in the comments section below. If you could engage with this content in any way, hit like, hit subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it, kind of bumping up in the old algorithm. And as always, thank you for tuning in.